and he got addicted to boxing, bro. What is it about boxing that you love so much, man?
Said, yeah, the fighters. So we actually got connected to our pastor.
To see them and to put them in the position like Gabe is right now, where they can retire and be comfortable and not having to fight because they need the money.
Because you can have the expectations of being a champion and you become a champion, but now money comes with that. You don't know how to handle money.
It's made this world where fighters had to be so cautious and so apprehensive and actually almost distrusting.
It was good, y'all. It's Gabe Rosado along with me, Gallo, Abner. We got a special guest, the one and only Charles Liu. He's my attorney. He now represents a bunch of fighters now, man. Charles got in the game and he got addicted to boxing, bro. What is it about boxing that you love so much, man?
Well, I don't know if I love it, but I mean, I guess
You
I
gotta love it a little bit.
I gotta love it a little
He
bit.
doesn't like what
Yeah,
happens
yeah, yeah.
behind, but that's why he's a lawyer.
There's moments of it I love.
course.
It's probably love hate, probably
Right.
like for fighters.
Yeah,
Also,
I like that.
but yeah, so I got with Gabe. Actually, we met in church. I don't know. You remember that?
Yeah,
but-
no, for
great.
sure.
Yeah, so I was in church and I see this like big scary dude from a bunch of gold and sunglasses in church. And I said to someone, "Who is that?" And he said, "Oh, that's Gabriel Rosado." And I said, "Wait," because I'd always been a fan of the
Right,
fight
right.
game. I was like, "Wait, the Gabriel Rosado from Triple G?"
Right,
and
right.
and they
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, the fighter." So we actually got connected to our pastor.
The legend.
And with
Yeah.
the legend, yeah, we got connected to our pastor, and really from the jump, we just had a great relationship, and just such a stand-up guy, and such a he was so proper and conducted himself in such a good manner from a business perspective, and that was when I kind of saw that. It wasn't necessarily behooving individuals to conduct themselves in the right manner because the boxing world ate people up. So
Right.
it almost made this world where fighters had to be so cautious and so apprehensive and actually almost distrusting, which is very
In any
unfortunate.
business, I think so.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate when you go into the business in a distrusting way. So I kind of saw a vacuum, if you will, for adequate representation. And that's not to say there's not great people out there, but I definitely saw an opportunity, and Gabe was gentlemanly enough and maybe foolhardy enough to
Yeah.
give me an opportunity to represent him. And of course, when Gabe represents to people that this person represented him well and spoke well for him and articulated things well for him, negotiated his contracts well, I just got a flood of clients and champions and
Nice.
fighters.
So
and
he
that
was your
kind of
first
thing.
client? He was
That's
your
my
first
day
boxer?
one.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
man.
That was gonna be my next question. Who was your first fighter? But you pretty much wow.
Yeah, man.
So that church too, man. God talked
church,
to him.
at
You know,
church,
it was
man.
fate. Literally, it was fate,
his,
bro.
his mom actually told me that.
No, it
Yeah,
is,
man.
bro. We know.
And now Charles works with a lot of good fighters coming up. Roxy being one of them, helping Roxy out, man. So it's great, man. For one thing is you want someone that represents you
Right.
that obviously knows the business, but Charles is dude got a great heart, man. Great heart. He really cares for the best interests
Of the fighter, yeah.
of the fighter, man. So that's dope, man. In this business, bro, which is it's a dog eat dog kind of business, man. How do you see it, man?
So I think the business from my perspective, especially I came in as such an outsider, which is good and bad. So the good thing is I wasn't behooving to the natural parties or the people that ran the sport because I came again from a business law, technology law, private equity side. So I didn't necessarily need to play nice with the relevant
Right,
parties.
right.
Which is a good thing and a positive, but it also makes you somewhat of an outsider, which means you have to establish yourself as a reputable person. So I think from a grand scale, a macro perspective, it's been incredible. It's taken a couple of years to really get into the circles and meet the right people, and also understand just how the boxing world works, because it is so different from any other, not only any other business, but even totally different from sports. I
Right.
mean, I represent NBA players, NFL. I've worked with a cascade of sports
Oh, really?
professionals, and it really the entirety of the spectrum, all manners of sporting professionals, and combat sports, boxing in particular, is really, really a unique animal. But it's been exciting, and again, it's a passion of mine. And to Gabe's point, it's really nice to be able to look at fighters and understand the unique specifics of their needs, because not only are the careers relatively short, but the careers can be unfortunately cut incredibly short very, very quickly. And you also have to be very cognizant of the fact that injuries can and do happen. So we have to be very prescient as we plan for financial, uh,
You
unexpected
provide all that. You
financial
help out with all that.
expenses.
You,
Yeah,
you
we help
guide
out
people,
well,
yeah,
and
the fighters with all that. It's not just an attorney that's there, like in case something happens. You're there also to guide the fighter, the your client to like, bro, like you just made X amount of money. Put your money here. Do this with your money. Yeah.
yeah, well, because it's got to be comprehensive. Like first time Gabe and I sat down, I understood that he's a very intelligent guy in a sport, in a situation where he had to again be very, very prudent with the expenditure of his money and the allocation of his funds.
Right.
And I don't want to give away too much of Gabe's finances or his situation, but he's been extremely,
Smart with his
extremely
money.
smart, and he's
Bless him.
made incredibly prudent moves, and he's invested his money in such a way that at this point in time, Gabe fights for the love of fighting and he commentates for the love of commentating. So to look at Gabe at this point in his career and see how successful he's been, especially towards the back end of the career, and the moves that he made that again were so prescient and so sagacious, to the point where now he's in this very, very comfortable position, doing the things he loved and the sports he loved. That's what makes me tick.
Right. That's what I'm sure. But that's what drives you, like you said, drives you to help out other fighters. To see them and to put them in the position like Gabe is right now, where they can retire and be comfortable and not having to fight because they need the money. You got me? Like you said, like for instance, injuries. Thank God I had an injury. I had an eye injury. I don't know if you heard about that, but thank God it happened during pretty much the end of my career. I was already accomplished, a four-time, three division world champion. It happened. I was gonna fight Tank Davis, but if I were in the position where where I was already, I could have been, homeless right now, to be honest. But thank God I was in a position where I already had made my money. I made some wise and smart decisions. Unfortunately, I didn't have a guy like you next to me, but I did have someone.
I'll give you his
Yeah,
contact. I got you.
no, but I'm saying like I was still smart enough to
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
make some moves with my money. But imagine if I would have had you, brother. That's crazy. It changes your life. That's what it does. And that's
For
what
sure.
some of us fighters don't see that. Sometimes it's just about making money and spending it, and that's it. All right, I'll make my money in the next fight. Because I used to have that mentality. I used to be
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna spend, no, 100K right now. I'm gonna make 1 million in my next fight.
Yeah, yeah.
Come back. You get an
I've
injury
heard
and then it's
that,
gone.
yeah,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I've heard that so many times with fighters, and we've talked about it all the time. Everybody has these metrics and these benchmarks. So a fighter will, they'll make this check and they think those checks are never ending. And then unfortunately, I call it watch and car money, because there's a lot of fighters make enough money to buy nice watches and nice cars, but not set themselves up for life. So they run out and they've got 3, 4 watches, 3, 4 cars, and zero money in the savings account. And to your point, their thought is, well, I got next fight, next fight, next fight. But sometimes those next fights never come. So we got to be, again, very, very prudent and very thoughtful as to the money, because you never know when that money's going to stop. And you should contemplate that money stopping tomorrow and set yourself up as such that if it does stop tomorrow, you're in a good position.
When I learned that was when I was gonna fight. I was in a bantamweight tournament. I was getting paid, good money already. I was with Showtime, a bantamweight tournament. My next fight was gonna be against Joseph Akbeko, the final of the tournament, and the guy pulled out. I think the week of. And in boxing, if you don't fight, you don't get paid. So I did the whole training camp. I spent a lot of money, sparring partners, all that. And then for them to tell you, all right, the fight's off, you don't get paid. I'm like, all right, when am I fighting again? 3, 4 months from now. And then you're like, damn, that money didn't come in. Now I got to spend more of the, that I got saved. So that's when I started, like really thinking like, man, I got to save my money. I can't be stupid and spending my money. Like, it's just next fight's going to come through. Because like
For
you
sure.
said, things can happen. Accidents
Yeah.
happen and injuries and fire. Nothing's guaranteed in this life.
No, for sure, man. It's a short window in boxing, man. You're lucky to have 10 years.
Yeah.
Anything past 10 years is like you blessed, bro.
Yeah.
So, it's very important for young fighters, that when you set goals to become champion, set goals too when the money comes. Because that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Because you can have the expectations of being a champion and you become a champion, but now money comes with that. You don't know how to handle money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then you got to pay taxes, and there's so many things that you have to do. So it's just very important for fighters to really be strategic on when the money's coming in, what to do with the money, put money away for taxes, put money away for this. Because when the career is over, man, you want to be in a position where you're good and you're comfortable, man. So that's very important, man. And Charles Lou is, you're one of the best advisors to definitely help and guide fighters, man, into that journey. We were at with Robert Garcia, and that was one thing that Robert
He was
Garcia,
talking
his
about,
gym,
yeah.
what they do with their fighters is they let their fighters know, look, taxes here, and that's so important, man, to really put fighters on, because the thing
Yeah.
is that if you don't have that,
Yeah.
you take too much risk. You know what I'm saying? And you take fights that you don't need or things like that, man. So,
And we've all
it's
seen
important.
it. I mean, you guys have seen it. You've been there and you've seen the entourage. And entourages are big and they're growing and they're energetic when the money's there. But as soon as that money starts drying up, the entourage starts shrinking. People start
Yeah.
saying, hey, man, I got to get paid. Checks sit on the table for longer because the fighter's not just grabbing it and picking it up.
Yeah.
Airline tickets, people start saying, well, who's paying for this? Who's paying? So you guys know all of that. And then that's the thing. It's these things seem very simplistic now. Now you go, well, of course that's how that stuff.
Yeah.
But imagine if 15 years ago or 20 years ago or 15 years ago, someone had said, hey, we need to sit and we need to distill down your costs. We need to understand what your ROI, because it's just a business.
Yeah.
What's your return on
Yeah.
investment for this fight? And how do you protect yourself and your intellectual property? Fighters never talk about their intellectual property, even down to the most simplistic things. Again, your website, your domain names and your trademarks and
crazy.
your merchandise and all of these
Yeah.
things. Fighters don't understand they're a business.
No,
That
yeah,
fighter
exactly.
is
You're a
your
brand. You're
your
a business.
brand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I always got taught. You're a brand. You
doubt.
build your brand, and now you're worth this much. And getting the right people to build your brand even higher and protecting it. And it's evolving. Boxing is evolving. Boxing is where I've always said, where there's money involved, bro. There's so many people greedy. We want people going. And when you got the right people, the right team, they want to protect your money. They want to protect you, and that's obviously that's where you come in. Question I have for you: what's the one thing you've seen in boxing where, like, oh man, fighters need to work on this even more? I know that we talked about the money, but tell us, what is there something that your boxers that you could tell the boxers out there that take advice on?
I think from a boxing perspective, the most important thing I could ever impart to young boxers or old boxers, anybody in the entirety of the boxing career, is your own edification, your own education. Just you've got to get learned. You have to learn. You have to understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. When someone says sign this contract, you should feel empowered enough to ask
Educate
why.
yourself, yeah.
Because too many times and too many instances, fighters get contracts sat in front of them and they trust the people. And a lot of times these people are trustworthy. So it's not even that the person putting a contract in front of them is not trustworthy. It's just that things go awry. There's a saying, it's the best laid plans of mice and men gone off to glee. It's a very famous Robert Burns saying. What it means is the best laid plans go to hell. So that person, when he sets that contract in front of you, she might have the best intentions for you. She might really believe that she's leading you in the right direction, but you need to look through that contract and say, what if? So you need to look at all of these different circumstances and examine everything from a
What if,
what
I
if
like that.
perspective, a contingency perspective. What are the plans when things go awry? Because they most certainly will go awry. The question is, how far will they go awry, and what's your plans and your preparations when things go to hell?
That's well put,
No
man.
doubt,
That's
man. That's what's up, man. So, Charles, man, let everybody know your handle, how we could get at you.
So just get at me through my agent, Gabe. CharlesLou.eth on Instagram, and charles@thelewfirm.com. The Lou Firm, just like the law firm, but lewfirm.com.